Moving into the gonads, the ovaries and the testes, we'll start with the ovaries. Now, from an endocrine perspective, the ovaries are producing hormones. They're producing progesterone and estrogen. Now, the functionality of these hormones is helping to deal with the maturation of the female reproductive organs. But that's not the only thing. You're also dealing with secondary sexual characteristics. So as a female goes through puberty and matures sexually, these secondary sexual characteristics are what are being triggered by estrogen and progesterone, as well as the development of the breast tissue and the cyclical nature of the uterine mucosa. Now, that cyclical nature of the uterine mucosa is the increasing layers of the mucosa, or the layers, as well as then decreasing layers if fertilization of an egg did not occur. Now, that's all meant to try and make sure that if fertilization occurs, there's a healthy, nutritious environment for that growing embryo. So if that occurs, then the placenta will come into play. Placenta, obviously it's only there if the woman is pregnant, but the placenta is an endocrine gland. The placenta is going to produce estrogen, it'll produce progesterone, it'll also produce human chorionic gonadotropin. Now HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. So pretty much what happens in this case is the placenta takes over from the ovaries. The ovaries produce the hormones for a certain period. Once the placenta has established, the placenta takes over production of these hormones. So while the ovaries are always there, placenta is only there during pregnancy. Now looking at the ovaries. Now while the ovaries will deal with these more at the reproductive section of the course, we're focusing right now on the maturing oocyte, basically this secondary follicle here. Because that's where you're producing the actual hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So looking at that individual follicle is all you really need to identify at this point. All right, testes. Shifting gears to the male side of things now. Looking at testosterone being produced in this case. It's being produced from things called interstitial cells, and I'll show you that in a second. But testosterone itself is also male reproductive organ maturation. So it's the same thing as a male is coming up through puberty. As those reproductive organs are maturing, testosterone is partial behind the driving factor. Also looking at the secondary sexual characteristics that will occur in a male as they go through puberty. Now I have here, it's necessary for normal sperm production. Yes, testosterone is needed to make sure sperm are produced normally, but increasing testosterone does not increase the actual sperm production. If anything, it can potentially cause more damage. Remember, what actually is causing the sperm produced? That was the follicle stimulating hormone, FSH. So yes, testosterone is needed for production to make sure they're healthy and functional, but the initial production starts because of FSH. And then also testosterone helps maintain the reproductive organs. So it's again, same thing as estrogen, kind of keeping the system running, keep the system going. When you start looking at the histology, these cells that are in between the tubes, those in between cells, those are the interstitial cells. That's what produces testosterone. The actual seminiferous tubules, that's all dealing with sperm production. So we're in between the tubules, the interstitial cells. Now the testis itself is always maintained outside of the body. This is not a hormonal reason, this is for a sperm production reason. Because optimal temperature for sperm production is about 3 to 4 degrees lower than body temperature. So we'll get that more in the reproductive system as well. But for now, testes is an external structure to the male system, ovaries is an internal structure. Looking at progesterone and estrogen from the ovaries, testosterone from the actual testes. So those are the gonads, male and female gonads, ovary and testes, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.